Very good day. Greetings to the audience, to who are seeing our webinar from Faculty of Dentistry, Massa University. I am Dr. Maan Al-Marzouk, the coordinator for webinar series of Faculty of Dentistry. Please allow me to welcome my colleague, who will be the moderator for today's webinar. I would like to welcome Associate Professor Dr. Ratna Southi. He is staff of Faculty of Dentistry since 2010 from the Department of General Dental Practice. He got his bachelor degree in 1981 from Manipal University in India, and then he pursued his postgraduate studies in general dental practice since he is a specialist since 1984. He worked in private practice since then, and then he joined Massa University for the last 13 years. Please allow me to welcome Dr. Ratna Southi.
Thank you very much, Dr. Maan. Yeah, welcome again to everyone. And I wish to thank Dr. Maan for organizing this webinar. And today's webinar is on mental health, because as I know that in Malaysia, mental health is still very not very forward, in the sense that very few, the whole community, they take mental health as a stigma, and they are very, very scared to approach the problem. So now I've got my classmate from Kajang High School who worked in England for the past 42 years. And he's been into, first he did general nursing, and then he went into mental health. And he was attached to the NHS for the first 30 years, and the remaining 14 years, he was in a private healthcare facility where he manages mental health patients. And I would like to introduce Mr. Albert Chalaya, who is done his specialty in mental health. And the last post before he came back home to Malaysia was he's been a director of a private mental health caregiver healthcare workplace. It is called Signet Healthcare. So let me introduce you to Mr. Albert Chalaya from the UK. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon to all of you, and thank you for joining me today and participating in the webinar. My many thanks also to Associate Professors Dr. Ratna Southi, Dr. Malan, and Dr. Pave for inviting me to share my experience. Hopefully, during and after this discussions, this webinar, it hopefully will stimulate some of our minds, knowledge, and understanding. Now, if I was to tell you that almost half a decade ago, as a student, I walked the streets of a quiet, sleepy village in Manchester called Prestwich. The reason Prestwich is because that's where I initially trained, a large mental health asylum called Prestwich Hospital. Now, we used to walk the streets with my fellow students to talk to members of the public about the stigma and how it kind of affects people's perception of mental illness. Now, almost 48 years later, here I am again talking about stigma. Right, who am I? Well, my name is Albert, and I've spent all my working life, that is over 45 years, in the United Kingdom. I trained as a mental health nurse and also did my general nursing. And following further educational and advanced training and programs progress to various senior positions within the NHS and independent sector. However, it's important to note that I am not a qualified psychiatrist, and talking about mental health diagnosis and treatment is not within my scope. During my time in the healthcare, I worked in a variety of positions, including from being a nurse to senior managerial, director level, and CEO level within the NHS and independent sector. I retired from my tenure as a hospital director of the largest independent sector hospital in central London. What I'll be talking today is basically derived from my experience having worked in mental health settings for all these years. Okay, now, as we all know, mental health is a very complex field with a rich history. To talk about all these issues in some details, again, beyond the scope of the webinar. So I'm going to be briefly touching on some of the items I've highlighted here. Now, many cultures, in terms of demonic possession, many cultures attributed unusual behaviors and mental distress to spirits and demons inhabiting in that person's body. Different civilizations develop various rituals and practices to address this, like exorcism, prayer, and even bloodletting. I hope that, in this day and age, we now recognize there are conditions, that these conditions have biological, psychological, and social origins. Cultural beliefs within mental health struggles, signs of some of the cultural beliefs were that they were signs of personal weakness, spiritual imbalance, and they resorted to collective healing, etc. And this led to a lot of stigmatization, the lack of support systems. There are many theories of mental health, and I think two well-known theories of mental health are Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytic theory, and the other one is CBT, which I'm sure you know is cognitive behavior therapy. Now, Freud's analytic theory suggests that mental health is influenced by unconscious conflicts and desires. And according to Sigmund Freud, our thoughts and behaviors are driven by unconscious motives and unresolved childhood experiences, which can lead to psychological distress. This theory places emphasis on one's unconscious mind through talk therapy to gain insight into that person's thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. Now, cognitive behavior therapy, on the other hand, focuses on the interaction between our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors. It basically suggests that mental health is influenced by our perception and interpretation of events, really. And the CBT approach aims to identify and challenge negative thoughts and patterns and replace them with more positive, adaptive ones. By changing our thoughts and behaviors, the CBT approach aims to improve mental health well-being. Now, we have to remember, while these theories offer valuable insight, there are many other theories and approaches out there. And I'm sure if you're interested, we can discuss later and we can, research some of these theories and approaches. Now, in terms of approaches, there are two main approaches to mental health. One is about self-care, because taking care of oneself is crucial for maintaining good mental health. It involves practices like exercising regularly, getting enough sleep, eating a balanced diet, and often engaging in meaningful activities. Number two, they also to seek support. Reaching out for support when needed is essential. I think one of the things we're going to be talking about later is how do we create this conducive environment where these patients with these people with mental health challenges are able to, seek out support without feeling ashamed or being stigmatized. Now, support is crucial that we get support from friends, family, support from support groups, and also seeking professional help from psychiatrists, psychologists, and other members of the team. Okay, what is stigma? Stigma, stigma refers in brief to the negative beliefs and attitudes that society holds towards individuals with mental health challenges. It's excuse me. The feeling is like a big dark cloud that follows patients around them, making it difficult for them to seek help, to feel understood, and even live a fulfilling life. So I think one of the reasons for this webinar is how we need to break down the stigma. It's like opening a window to let some fresh air in for these unfortunate people. It's also about spreading awareness, understanding, compassion, and creating an environment where everyone feels safe to talk openly about their mental health. And just to go back on touching on mental health, which I forgot to include, was the introduction of pharmacology. There are a wide range of medication commonly used to help manage different conditions. Like we have antidepressants, we have antipsychotics, we have mood stabilizers for bipolar disorders, and anxiolytics. And as you know, each of these drugs work differently in the body as it affects various receptors in the brain. I just wanted to add that in before we continue. Now, in terms of stigma, we have three main types of stigma. We have discrimination, we have self-stigma, we have the stereotypes, and just to touch on the first three. Now, discrimination refers basically to unfair treatment or prejudice against individuals who are clearly dealing with mental health challenges. It could mean that people with mental health conditions may face negative attitudes, stereotypes, or misconceptions from others. They often occur in various spheres of life, such as in education, employment, healthcare, or even social interactions. Instances of discrimination in mental health can manifest as people feeling excluded, stigma, and even denial of rights and opportunities for them. Example, I'll give you a kind of scenario. Imagine two individuals, let's call them Tom and Fred. Both are experiencing symptoms of depression. Now, Tom shares his struggles with a few close friends who respond with empathy, understanding, and offering support. On the other hand, Fred discloses his mental health challenges to his employer, who, due to ignorance or lack of knowledge, very often they tend to react negatively, sometimes using unkind language, and threatens to fire him. So, in a basic sense, in this scenario, we see discrimination based on mental health. From Tom, he receives support and compassion. On the other hand, Fred is prejudiced and mistreated. It can lead to people feeling ashamed, discouraged from seeking help. And I think to address this, we really need to create awareness and promote understanding and fostering that inclusivity. We need to create a supportive environment where individuals feel comfortable seeking help. We need to treat them with respect and kindness. Now, self-stigma is when someone starts to believe and internalize negative societal attitudes and stereotypes about mental health. Now, this is someone who is like carrying around a backpack full of unfair judgments, self-doubt, and shame. Extremely difficult to seek help or speak openly about one's mental health experience. Imagine if one of us had some cool superpower, but you were too afraid to use it because you worried people might think that you were, in layman's term, you were crazy, and you were not in the right frame of mind. So self-stigma can have a similar effect on individuals with mental health challenges. It might make them, I'm not saying it might, it definitely makes them feel isolated, ashamed, reluctant to reach out for support. But we really shouldn't worry too much, because there are ways to address this self-stigma and lighten the backpack. We can do this by promoting self-acceptance, education on mental health, challenging negativity, negative beliefs, just a few of these. And we need to be able to fight this invisible enemy. Now, stereotypical behaviors or stereotype stigma are basically oversimplified and generalized views, beliefs about individuals with mental health conditions. One example of stereotype is the belief that people with mental illness are always violent or dangerous. Whilst I have to admit it's true, or in some cases, with certain individuals may exhibit aggressive behaviors, it's unfair and inaccurate to assume that this applies to everyone with mental health problems. Now, as employees, I think we also need to be careful with the kind of language we use. And, sometimes people faced with mental health challenges, if they're feeling unwell, it's quite difficult for them to ring the employer and say, look, I'm feeling a bit overly anxious, or I don't feel too well, and I need to take a day off sick. But I think it's easier for them to say, well, I've got a migraine, or I've got a stomach upset, or sprained back. And I think, in this day and age, it appears to be more acceptable for requesting a day off sick, using those examples rather than say, I don't feel too well in myself. And I think that is the thing we need to break, really. Now, how do we challenge these misconceptions in mental health? Now, one of the main things is actually education. Now, we all know that knowledge is power. So I encourage each and every one of you, including myself really, to learn more about mental health, its various conditions and their causes. And I think once we have acquired this knowledge, we need to make sure that we share this information openly with others, to basically dispel some of the myths and try to replace them with facts. So if we are feeling ignorant about matters in mental health, please try to educate yourself more by reading, researching. There's lots of stuff on the internet, and go out there and try to get as much information as you can, and share them openly. Conversation. Now, we need to create an environment where we can talk freely and openly, in open and honest discussions about mental health. Encourage people to share their experience and feelings, and create a supportive environment. I think mental health is something that is still a taboo, so people tend to shy away and not talk openly about it. As difficult as it is, try to make it a regular and common occurrence. When they're sitting down, talk about mental illness. The WHO, for example, says that 1 in 4 people globally suffer from some kind of mental or neurological disorder. Now, basically what that means is each and every one of us knows somebody with a mental health problem. Yeah. So try to reach out to these people that you know are struggling, and have that open conversation with them, make them feel supported, and try to break the taboo that mental health is different to physical health. It's very important to note that a lot of physical health problems can manifest as mental health symptoms, and conversely, a lot of mental health problems can present as physical health symptoms. So it's very important to make sure that there is this link between mental health and physical health. Now, empathy. Now, what is empathy? Empathy, on the converse side of sympathy, is when you sympathize with somebody, you're externally sympathizing with somebody's feeling. Now, it is very important to be empathetic towards somebody who's having these mental health challenges. It's being with them, trying to understand what they're going through, and supporting them. Just saying, "Oh, I sympathize with your problem," is really not helpful. So try to use that empathetic approach to your colleagues, your family, friends, whoever you think is struggling with mental health challenges. And again, make sure you provide that conducive environment where they can openly talk and seek support. Language. The language really matters. Be mindful about the language you use around people who are actually struggling with mental health. Many people use terms like crazy, is lunatic, is a crackpot, or oh, it's all in your head. Of course, it's in your head because everything stems from your head. So we need to be careful about the language that we use, and have to think, especially when you're around people who are having these challenges. Be careful what language you use. Okay, very quickly, how do we combat stigma? I think just to recap, we need to talk openly about mental health, know the facts, educate yourself, be aware of your attitudes and behavior, choose your words carefully, try to focus on the positives. We all have positives, so try to play down the negative attitudes, negative behaviors, and focus on the positives. Support them, be supportive, and be inclusive. Include them in your conversations, include them in your general chats when you have with them, and don't make it a taboo. Difficult as it is, we need to make a start. It would really be sad if after this webinar we just turned our computer off and carried on our usual work. As try to focus on what we're talking about today, and try to apply them into practice. Okay, be empathetic, the ability to understand and share others' emotions. Okay, I've got a 10-minute clip of an interview. Excuse me. I was in London a couple of weeks ago, and I took the opportunity to meet up with a long-term service user who briefly started engaging with mental health services at a very young age. He was with CAMS, which is Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service. From there, he progressed on to further levels of security. He was in a high secure hospital due to causing grievous bodily harm. Then he was in an adolescent secure unit, and then he ended up in a high secure hospital where he was there for many years. Subsequently, he was discharged, and we as an organization has employed him as an expert by experience. Basically, his job now is to speak on behalf of the patients and advise the board on what we have to do to make sure that we enhance the patient's experience when he's in hospital. There are lots of things with patient involvement, like co-production, for example. The commissioning of services, we use patients to help us to commission new services. So just listen to this clip, and I've covered half his face, but although he has agreed to consent to be on the safe side, half of his face has been covered, and he talks about some of the stigma. Yeah, and then we can have some questions later.
Listen, first of all, I really wish to thank you really for kindly agreeing to take. This short interview. But I think most importantly, I also have to reassure you and confirm that this video clip is specifically for budget professionals and professional colleagues really, and who they wish to have a better understanding of mental health, the associated stigma, because it's quite different and new with the relationship. And I can also assure you that this particular clip will not be social media. For example, I YouTube specifically for my professional colleagues in the university. Yeah. Are you happy with that? Yeah. Okay, let's proceed then. As you know, the concept of mental illness is massive. So I have to delve into this in some details, basically the scope of this interview. So, in your own words, can you briefly tell me how you've first engaged with mental health services, your journey, your personal experience, and more importantly, the challenges and the stigma that you faced during your journey?
I was first under CAMS as a child, so I was experiencing various problems, and then I was actually put into an adolescent unit before actually being eventually put into a prison. And then when I got out of prison, and then I ended up back in prison, and it was there that I got sectioned under the Mental Health Act for a very long stay in hospital.
Roughly how old were you at that point?
When I got sectioned in prison, I was 19.
19?
Yeah, so 19.
And then you went to prison?
I was in prison for 2 GPHs.
Okay.
Got 9 years for that, but I ended up doing 11 years on that sentence, because I spent all in hospital virtually that sentence. Obviously, I'd been incarcerated for 3 years, but just before that.
Okay.
From the age of 16 to 19.
So your initial contact was with the CAM service.
Yeah.
CAM stands for Community Adverse and Mental Health Services.
Yeah.
And then you went to prison.
Yeah.
Okay. And then at what age did you re-engage with mental health services, not as an adolescent?
Mainly when I was in prison.
Okay.
Because I was actually asking when I was younger and I was experiencing problems when I was like 15. I asked for help of my own accord. I actually asked for treatment, like for what I was experiencing, high levels of anxiety and mental health issues, which I later found out after being diagnosed as a personality disorder. So like really struggling emotionally.
At any point, did you feel that you were getting some form of help when you basically asked for help? I know you were in the mental health in the prison service.
Yeah, healthcare.
Okay. What kind of challenges did you face?
I think I was just, in my own kind of way, looking at it now, was a cry for help.
Okay.
Because I later regretted it, but I actually wanted to go to the hospital for it. Like I was in despair, struggling with the sentence that I got, struggling with everything, struggling with life. it dawned on me that I knew I was going to be incarcerated for a long period of my life. And it kind of just got too much for me. I started being violent and then that's when they referred me to the mental health team, and then they made a referral. It was an absolute shock to me because they came to me and I thought, I'd go to a low secure, medium secure unit. I never imagined that they'd put me in high security. They referred me to, when they came to me, I remember them saying you've been referred to Broadmoor. I just remember thinking, that's reserved for like serial killers and, not people, although what I done was bad, there's levels to it, and I thought, that doesn't really match with me. I remember just being absolutely shell-shocked.
So if we kind of fast forward to where you got discharged, because obviously you were urgent need of treatment when you were in prison. Yeah, so they moved you to a hospital setting for treatment. So when you eventually got discharged, I know there were hiccups during your discharge phase, wasn't there?
A lot, yeah. A lot.
Let me just briefly say something.
From the medium security unit back to the centre, where I was discharged from. I've had my problems with substances, and I was drinking quite a lot, getting quite frustrated and aggressive. I think a lot of it because I was desperate to leave. It was taking a long time. Mainly around the drinking problem. Some of the staff now, I've actually seen a couple of staff and we have a laugh about it, to be honest, because some of it was very embarrassing as well on my part, but I was drinking quite a lot.
So, because it's kind of a short interview, so you were still in camps, prison, you became unwell, you moved to hospital, second 47, I presume, something like that.
Yeah, from prison,
And then eventually you got discharged.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what sort of challenges did you face once you left that setting? You're out there community, you mix with people. Do you feel at any point that you were what's the word I'm looking for? Well rehabilitated to be in the community? Or was it a culture shock to you?
I feel because of the length of the incarceration, which actually some doctors have actually said to me, not some, all of them, have said to me was far too long. I feel like it hit me like a ton of bricks. I mean, luckily they gradually gave me leave and I went on escorted and unescorted leave. So it was a gradual reintegration. It wasn't just thrown out the door, but it was tough. It still is tough at times, it's got a lot into it.
Do you want to just briefly talk about the challenges, the stigma that you face, amongst just not the community, but perhaps some from your loved ones as well?
The main stigma that I've faced is mainly of my family. I still face it now because they treat me as though I should be further progressed in life than I am, which I find quite harsh. Because I know they love me, but they compare me to my brothers who have got their own houses or they've got decent, they're doing well in life. And they treat me like I should be further progressed, but there's a stigma. They get angry with me rather than sympathetic when I say I'm struggling or if I'm having a bad day or I'm depressed and I go a bit quiet. They get annoyed with me. There is a lot of judgmental thinking from my family.
Do you think that's because lack of understanding, education?
Yeah, maybe a bit of, I don't know whether some of it's anger towards me as well, for what I put the family through, but they never seem to want to move on from that. It's like they don't forgive me. But the real reason, and they've actually said, the doctors have said to me, the reason I developed a personality disorder and the emotional dysregulation that I face to a lesser degree even today is because of my need, like my emotional neglect as a child, unintentionally from my parents. Yeah, they just don't understand me at all. My brother's in prison as well.
Okay. You are now working as an expert by experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is fantastic, really. Having gone through everything. How did you personally? How did you manage to overcome all that and get to the situation you work out to? Because you would be advising patients who only had a similar experience, but hopefully, not as prolonged as what you have.
Yeah.
So
I feel like when this was suggested to me, I mean, through someone I know, I thought it was a great opportunity. Straight away, I felt passionate about it because if I could potentially help in any way, then that's my aim, so I'm just very passionate about it.
I mean, it's not an easy transition because obviously it takes a lot of courage and strength in you to arrive in the situation. I mean, in this position. So how did you do that? And how did you tell yourself that you were well enough, and you will be productive to the other patient?
I don't know really. I think it's just naturally inside of me that I wanna kind of do something good with my life. I wanna do something good and use my bad experiences for good.
Okay. Finally, how are you being treated now? Knowing that you are a prospective expert
By my parents or my family or
anyone generally.
I feel there's a little bit more respect, like from my family and stuff. But generally, everyone I've met, including yourself, have been extremely kind, welcoming, made me feel like people, which I'm not used to in my life. So I feel,
Okay. Final question. What advice would you give me and the rest of the audience who will be listening to this as to how to treat someone who's got a mental health problem or mental health issue, and what can they do to make you feel worthy, to make you feel, what do you think we ought to be doing?
From my experience, I think if you treat people with kindness, you'll get the best out of people. And even people that are maybe extremely aggressive or people that people want to stand up for, I feel try and look past the initial, what you see on the surface. I think treating people with kindness is what I would say. Yeah, and respect. Because I feel a lot of the time that's what people really deep down want is to feel valued as a human being.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much. Yeah, really appreciate it. Thanks for taking your time.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for listening or watching that little clip. I have to apologize for the poor audio quality of that clip, but I was keen to actually do the interview in a fully operating hospital. So apologies for the background noise. This particular gentleman obviously had an offending behavior, and he just talked us through how it stemmed from his early childhood, when he was in the camp service, progressed on, ended up in prison, became unwell in prison, sent to a high secure hospital, got treated there, fast forward, discharged, doing well. We wanted to promote his confidence and his ongoing well-being, we have employed him as expert by experience to work in hospitals, talking on behalf of patients, and creating a better environment for patients really with mental health problems. And to conclude, before we have any questions, there are two quotations here. The first one is anonymous. Basically, I think it's quite powerful, really. He who has health has hope, and he who has hope has everything. And the second one is actually by the actress Audrey Hepburn, who really had lots of mental health struggles throughout her career. Now, she says nothing's more important than empathy for another human being suffering. Nothing, not career, not wealth, not intelligence, and certainly not status. We have to feel for one another if we are going to survive with dignity. So, thank you very much for your time, and I'm happy to take some questions. If I'm unable to answer, I will get the answers for you and get back to you.
So it seems there's no questions from the audience.
Oh,
As I can see in the comments here. Does Dr. Atlasudi, may you want to ask you some questions?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Albert. Thank you so much, and for the so well-informed talk on mental health. I'd just like to ask you that, I'm not a mental health speaker or someone who has done mental health, but I just want to know whether when the patient is committing a crime, does he know that he's doing wrong, or is that it's not within his control that he does these actions? And what is the guarantee that he will not repeat that? Because I've read a little on insanity as a defense in the court, but they seem to get away with what they have done. So I just want to know your opinion on that high secure mental illness. Can it be treated for good? I know, I listened to you that it takes time to bring them to de-escalate, not escalate, to de-escalate them into the community so that they are safe. But these people, I just want to know whether they know that they are doing wrong or not.
okay.
Thank you, Mr. Albert.
Thanks, Dr. Suri. Let me answer your question because I think there are a number of questions here that you have posed. To start off with, when a member of the public commits an offense and taken to the police station, for example, there is a thorough mental state examination done by a qualified forensic psychiatrist. Now, the role of the forensic psychiatrist is to determine whether at the time of the offense, the patient was suffering from a classified mental illness or not. If the forensic psychiatrist is convinced that the offense was committed, and when the offense was committed, that offender was of sound mind, he goes through the penal system. He goes to court, and then the court will obviously, depending on the severity of the offense, passes judgment, prison sentence, for example. Now, at the time of the mental state examination in the police station, if the forensic psychiatrist determines or has concluded that the offender was not of sound mind when he committed the offense, then they bypass the penal system and go through the hospital route. Yeah. Again, depending on the severity of the offense, if it was a minor offense, then they go to a normal NHS mental health hospital. If it was like in this gentleman's case, GBH, grievous bodily harm, then you get sent to a secure hospital, because ultimately the gauge you're looking for is the risk of that person to the general community. Yeah. So the second scenario, he's committed an offense, it's a serious offense, is in high secure hospital basically means that he is locked up and there is no access or egress between the patient. He remains in that hospital and he undergoes specific treatment. If he was a sex offender, for example, if he committed a sex offense, then he goes through various sex offender treatment programs, which can sometimes take years. Now, these are conducted by very qualified, trained psychologists, and they undergo this treatment. And the multidisciplinary team at every review will determine the level of progress he's making. Okay, if he has completed all his programs successfully, then the team decides whether to allow this particular individual to start having community leave, and that is phased. It's progressive. They start off with a set period, 1 hour leave escorted. If that goes well, there are no signs of absconsion or further violence. He gets an hour unescorted, 2 hours unescorted, 3 hours unescorted, and gradually they progress. And then they get moved to low levels of security, from medium to low. Now, to your other very interesting question is, how can we guarantee that once they've gone through this program, they will not pose a risk to the community? It's not like a physical, illness where you can. This is something, in my experience, I have come across patients who have undergone these programs successfully, and a small percentage have reoffended. So I think because it's to do with mental health, it's very difficult to be definite and say that they will not reoffend. But from my experience, a majority, a large percentage, 80-90%, have progressed and gone on to live, happy, comfortable lives in the community without posing a risk. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Thank you so much.
There's a question from one of our audience, Dr. Santosh Kotian. Can you read it, Mr. Amar? What is your opinion on including mental health education in the school curriculum?
Absolutely. I'm extremely passionate about education, and I've got 3 daughters, and even they themselves have said that it's vital that it's part of the curriculum in schools, really, because if we are trying to integrate mental health to the same level as physical health, then there has to be education. And I think to start education at a much later stage is going to be a long haul. I think educating, talking about mental health at a very young age in school, to me, my personal opinion, I think is extremely important. I hope that answers your question. I'm 100% for talking about mental health, talking about the challenges that one could face at an early age.
So just before we break, and I just want to know whether the scenario in Malaysia is not as advanced as in the UK, but what should we do, like education at a young stage, educating the children on mental health, and the otherwise the care given to the present mental health patients, I think it's not very in a high level. So we just have the stigma says that, like in Tanjung Rambutan Hospital Bahagia, if you have been through there and you are on medicationally, you are discharged, there's a stigma still left. So that's the we want Malaysia to be in a more advanced stage where we can help the public to understand mental health issues, so that we can always accommodate them back to the community. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Albert. And just say that you are a Malaysian, but you have worked abroad. But what do you?
Okay. Two things. One is thanks, Dr. Suli. Before I started this talk, I was thinking about it, and please be reminded that I'm not here talking about how good it is in the UK, and I have to be sensitive because there are so many cultural differences. And I think, UK is advanced in the field of mental health, far more advanced than the US. I've been to US, I've been to New York on forensic conferences. It's far more advanced than Australia. Yeah. So I have to be sensitive about Malaysia. I'm Malaysian, and it is not to say that we should be in line with UK. No, but it's very refreshing to know that Malaysia has come up with a lot of new initiatives. There's a new mental health act that's come out in Malaysia, and I'm still looking at the other initiatives. There are lots of programs that are coming up, to reduce stigma and to raise awareness. There's a lot of talk in radio programs, for example, on mental health and well-being. So I think Malaysia is doing a fantastic job. I think we have a long way to go, but we are heading the right direction. I obviously need to do some more research on some of the programs, and I'm very interested and very reassured that we are definitely heading the right direction with a lot of new programs coming up.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Albert. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Albert, for
Thank you.
spending your time among your busy schedule. Yeah, Mr. Albert just came back from UK 2 days ago. I really appreciate his kind cooperation conducting today's webinar. At the end of it, I thank you everyone for listening to the webinar. Please wait for another webinar in the next couple of weeks about the application of lasers in endodontics. So please stay tuned for our next announcements. Thank you so much and have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thank you.